Every Thursday,
we're working to get you answers.
the most experienced reporters in general aviation.
Bringing you more details as they develop.
The stories that affect you.
We talk with our own safety expert.
Every Thursday, AOPA Live this week.
Coming up, future fuel for your aircraft, taking a sentimental journey, the insides of your gyro, and we're not talking about a Greek sandwich here.
Plus, I'm Tom Haines. We're in Wichita this week for our first chance to fly the new Cessna TTx. We'll take you along. AOPA Live this week starts right now.
Hello everyone, and welcome to AOPA Live this week for June 28th. I'm Warren Morningstar. Tom Haines will join us from Wichita in just a moment. But first, our top story, a major milestone towards replacing leaded avgas. It's no secret that we have to get the lead out of aviation fuel. Both the federal government and the courts will force the issue, but first, some good news. You're not going to run out of gas for your airplane.
Nobody can ban leaded avgas because there is no alternative which gives us the same degree of airworthiness. Flight safety is an FAA issue. Okay, EPA is certainly involved in determination of toxicology and different types of hazard types items, but at the end of the day, the fuel must be safe for flight, and that's an FAA issue.
Mike Kraft was a member of the FAA's Unleaded Avgas Transition Aviation Rulemaking Committee. The committee released its report this week, and AOPA's Rob Hackman also served on that committee.
Approach it from the standpoint that there is that no silver bullet fuel. We're not solving the issue with a fuel that takes care of everything. The FAA was never in a position of having to recertify the existing fleet, the entire fleet, or transition to a new fuel. We certified engines, we certified airplanes, individually as we went on a known entity. Now we're changing all of that, and there was really no path to be able to do that. It wasn't needed until this time.
In fact, we haven't considered a truly new aviation fuel since World War II.
Fuel doesn't just show up at the airport and get into your tank by the work of one refiner or one distributor. There's a whole supply chain involved in that.
The committee created the ARL scale, avgas readiness level, and that's to determine how far along the process towards actual use in the fleet any fuel might be. There are some 16 steps from creating a fuel to actually being able to use it.
Actually, the fuel might actually be the easiest piece.
Right.
You have the timeline to transition the supply base and the refinery sides, and then the whole distribution chain to get it to the aircraft. And the ARC's report and Lycoming's perspective on this is that if you're going to impact the aircraft, you have to do it over the natural life cycle. But there should be no misinterpretation to say that we don't think that this could be, from the consumer standpoint, a drop in fuel. It may not be a drop in from distribution, refining, certification, and control, but from the consumer standpoint, we need to minimize the impact to the consumer. Because at the end of the day, you're going to pull up to one airport and it's going to have 100 LL in a transition period. You'll pull up to another airport and it'll have UL 100 or whatever the designation is. That fuel has to be able to be, we call it fungible and miscible with whatever's in your tank.
Right.
So at the end of the day, the target is to make this as transparent as possible to the consumer.
A lot of things to consider. Kraft says that if any changes are required to an aircraft, it should happen during the course of the overhaul process. You can see the complete interview on aopalive.org. Of course, there is one city that has a very big stake in all of this. That's Wichita, Kansas, home to Cessna, Beechcraft, Learjet, and a host of other aviation companies. And that's where we find Tom Haines this week. Tom?
Thanks, Warren. Welcome to the air capital of the world. Welcome to Wichita. We're here inside the Cessna factory where they've got this great mock-up room with all of these Citation fuselages all ready for customers to come in and look at all the opportunities they have to customize their jets. We'll have more on that in a few minutes. But Cessna is not the only player in town. Lots of aviation activity here in Wichita, including the recent news about Hawker Beechcraft's bankruptcy, which we've been telling you about all along. While the bankruptcy proceedings work their way through the court system, the company continues to operate normally at its extensive 1 square mile factory complex on the city's east side. The facility includes its own 8,000-foot runway, control tower, and instrument approaches. Rumors abound about the company's future, and we'll keep our ears to the ground here in Wichita, keep you up to date on the latest. But the news out of Wichita isn't all bad. Flight activity here at Mid-Continent Airport is starting to pick up. And just this week, Cessna announced a new model, the Corvallis TTx, and I had a chance to check it out. The company announced at Sun 'n Fun 2011 that they had stopped production of the Corvallis TT while they focused on a series of enhancements and upgrades. It's certainly not the first time the model has been upgraded and renamed. The model started out life as a Lancer and became the Columbia 400 later. Cessna bought the product line out of bankruptcy and called it the Cessna 400, but later renamed it the Corvallis TT. As with all things Lancer, speed is in the model's DNA, and Cessna keeps that in spades in the TTx. As Cessna's Kirby Ortega tells us, the new Model X, with its new official model name of T240, also keeps that famed sporty handling.
The feel of the airplane, since it's direct control, what I refer to there is that with the control stick, we have control rods that go to the aileron and elevator, whereas with the high-wing airplanes, as you well know, we've got cables and pulleys. So the direct control is think about turning and it does it, versus to actually have to move a control yoke. So that aspect of the airplane makes it very unique to our product line at this time.
Of course, the TTx is not all about speed. There's a healthy new infusion of technology as well. You can really get in touch with your airplane through the new Garmin intrinsic panel.
And it utilizes a touchscreen located in the middle of the console. So instead of having the knobs with the G1000, the outer and inner knob, what you will do for the G2000 is touch what you want to change.
That's all great on the inside, but with this demonstrator, you'll stand out on the ramp for sure. Cessna has a whole new philosophy on paint schemes.
It's kind of unique in that we have put a lot of paint colors and designs onto this particular model and a clear coat.
Kirby says there are still more upgrades to come, especially around safety.
The flight into known icing package is about done, paperwork-wise it is. Clearing the FAA final hurdle is what we're looking at next. We will have the airbag seatbelts as we find in the high-wing airplanes with AMSafe, and then we will also install the Iridium system for satellite communications as well as weather.
First deliveries of the TTx are planned for later this year. Yours for a cool $734,000. How fast is it? How's it fly? Well, check back next week. We'll take it for a flight and tell you all about it. You'll be amazed. You know, it's not just aircraft that are built here in Wichita, like this Cessna Citation 10 that we're in here at the mock-up room at Cessna. Nope, a lot of vendors, suppliers around town, including one we had the opportunity to visit, Mid-Continent Instruments and Avionics.
This little box may be the most critical instrument in the panel at times. We've all seen the familiar face, but have you ever seen what's inside?
Well, the key inside is the spinning mass, as we call it in the gyro industry.
Todd Winter, president and CEO of Mid-Continent Instruments and Avionics, gave our cameras a peek behind the casing.
So we have a spinning wheel made out of specialized metals. Brass is the most common, but in some cases we use some specialized heavier metals, and we spin it at a very high rate of speed, and it wants to stay in the same place.
He says it's a familiar concept.
If you remember physics class or where they use a bicycle wheel and you spin it and then you try to turn it, you experience the gyroscopic effect.
And that makes the inner workings quite remarkable.
So the fun thing is, when you fly your aircraft, that little wheel never moves. And you and your seat and your aircraft are actually moving around this little spinning wheel that's mounted in your instrument panel, and that's what gives you the indication for your direction and for your attitude.
Mid-Continent aims for thousands of hours of reliable use out of their products. To make that happen involves workers with just the right touch.
The highly skilled people, because these are not made by robots. These are not imported. We build these in Wichita, Kansas, USA, and we have experts putting these together. It's like building a watch.
Instead of telling you the time, this box helps keep you alive. Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
Coming up in a few minutes, learn how you can get the most out of your aircraft insurance purchases. And we'll be back here in Wichita inside the jet mock-ups to show you more. Meanwhile, let's go back to Maryland, where Warren Morningstar is standing by.
Thanks, Tom. Gee, you get all the good trips. Why don't I get some of those? We'll see you later in the show. But coming up right after the break, there are lies, damned lies, and data link next rate. And we'll take a sentimental journey to Lock Haven, PA. AOPA Live this week continues in just a moment.
Flight following didn't call out an opposing plane. I saw it on the screen. He turned right and the other plane just pretty much flew right on by. It's your life. You only get one shot at this.
Welcome back. I'm Warren Morningstar. Tom Haines will rejoin us from Wichita in the next segment. Well, the NTSB said last week that something in your panel is lying to you. That something is your NEXRAD radar display, and more specifically, the timestamp that tells you how old your radar image is. That timestamp could be wrong, very, very wrong.
It has to do with when the image leaves the vendor, which is what's shown at the bottom of your screen over here, and when the image was actually taken by the National Weather Service radar. We do not want to use the cockpit weather that we get via data link to get really close to the storms. We want to avoid the entire area as much as possible. But unlike the radars of old, where you take just one sweep of the sky at one level, the NEXRAD is slicing at various levels, and that's what gives us this tremendous granularity to what's going on. Well, it takes a while, even in storm mode, to kind of go through all of that, process it, and then send it off to XM Weather, for example, or WSI to be further processed and then shipped up to your aircraft. So with all of this processing going on, what you get could be quite a bit older than when it left the vendor, which is when you're going to see the 1 to 2 to 5 minute updates that you're going to get. It could easily be up to 10 minutes old.
Bruce says you should use data-linked radar images as a way to go around storms, not between them. He recommends at least 20 miles between your flight path and the radar echoes. Now, there's a lot more under the Air Safety Institute tab on AOPA.org, and you can hear more from Bruce about radar on AOPALive.org. Well, you've just about run out of time. Monday is the last possible day to tell the FAA what you think about the AOPA EAA medical petition. Now, if the FAA buys into the idea, you should be able to fly a 4-seat, fixed-gear, single-engine airplane without an FAA medical certificate if you take an online medical awareness course. Now, you can learn much more about the idea online at aopa.org/advocacy. So far, nearly 10,000 pilots have commented, but it will take even greater numbers to help sway the FAA to change the medical certification rules. Remember, Monday, July 2nd is the last day to comment. Well, the Senate Commerce Committee grilled acting FAA Administrator Michael Huerta for about an hour last Thursday. The Obama administration nominated Huerta to become the permanent FAA boss for the next 5 years, but with Congress in gridlock mode, don't expect anything to happen on the nomination anytime soon. Some Capitol Hill insiders are predicting that the Senate will sit on the nomination until they see whether or not there will be a new boss in the White House come January. Well, last week, dozens of Piper Cubs and other aircraft descended on Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. It was the 27th annual Sentimental Journey fly-in, and this is the 75th anniversary of the Piper J3 Cub. It first flew here in 1937. Piper built the Cub in Lock Haven for 10 years. Today, the engineering building is the Piper Aviation Museum. The rest of the factory is a warehouse. The 4-day event includes forums and flying events. This year, for the first time in known Sentimental Journey history, a pilot scored a perfect bullseye in the bomb drop contest. And AOPA technical editor Mike Collins was there and focused his camera on one Piper Cub with several interesting stories to tell.
Hi, my name is Doug McKnight. This is my 1943 J3 Piper Cub. My dad flew this airplane in 1946. And when I found this airplane in 1999, in pieces in the second floor of the building. Put it back together in 2008 and I've been enjoying it since. It was a very interesting signing to trace my dad's old logbook entries through the FAA database and then find the registration of this particular aircraft. And so from that, I was able to then identify the owner in the pilot database. I happened to be working in the same neighborhood where the owner lived and found his name in a phone book, called him up, and 6 months later, I got in and pieces of the great story. The aircraft was originally owned by the Department of Defense, and it was built by Haines, the owner of the Southern Military. The aircraft stayed in the southeastern Pennsylvania area for all its entire life, and ended up going up to the second floor of the barn in New Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia, in the 70s, about 73. And it stayed there until I found it in 99, so it sat idle for a bunch of years. I ended up coming here to Sentimental Journey, to talk with Paul Smith, and I brought my fuselage identification number, and found out that was actually a glider fuselage number. And from that, we were able to then go talk to the folks in the museum, and then looking at the uniqueness of the square windows in the back rather than the round-shaped rear windows, we were able to identify that the fuselage was usually a problem. The location of the throttle controls are a little bit different in this because the throttle control location is for the post-hook release for the glider. It was actually a three-person glider. The front end cut where the engine was wrapped off, and there was a third seat that was sitting at the same time.
And then 46, my dad actually flew this as a J3 to Summit Airport within the city of Philadelphia.
That was Mike Collins reporting. Thanks, Mike. And beautiful airplane, Greg. Well, when we come back, we rejoin Tom in Wichita, how to get more bang from your insurance buck, and Lions and John and Martha, oh my.
From your first skyward glance, the dream of flight compelled you. And from your first glimpse of a Cirrus, you realized that dream had a name. Cirrus Aircraft. Go where you've never been before.
Welcome back to AOPA Live this week. And let's go back to Wichita one more time and Tom Haines.
Thanks, Warren, and welcome back to Wichita, where we're in the Cessna Jet mock-up room. We'll show you more of that a little bit later on. We came out to Wichita in my old Beach Bonanza. You know, like a lot of other Bonanza and Barron owners, I've been wondering, what does the Hawker Beechcraft bankruptcy mean to us? And so we went to a great source for that, Tom Turner, who is the executive director of the American Bonanza Society's Safety Foundation, who's got a great perspective on what the future looks like as far as parts availability and other things that matter to those of us who own Bonanzas and Barrons.
Well, the big thing we're getting from our members, Tom, is uncertainty. They don't know what to expect. The biggest issue that we probably have to deal with is parts availability, and there are some significant sources of parts available to us, but that's what people are most concerned about.
Tom says he also believes that the Beech piston line may in fact be able to stand alone as a viable company. We'll know more by the time AOPA Aviation Summit rolls around in October, and ABS and AOPA have partnered together to bring their members to the AOPA Aviation Summit, and ABS Executive Director Whit Hickman tells us what Bonanza and Barron owners can expect at the show.
We think it's going to give our members much more opportunity for learning, sharing ideas, technology, socialization, all those things that come with a conference.
You can learn more about AOPA Summit at aopa.org/summit. As we said earlier, Wichita is the air capital of the world, so it's not surprising that the world's largest pleasure and business aircraft insurance company is right here in the heart of it at Mid-Continent Airport. AOPA Insurance Agency is headed up by Janet Bressler, who is telling us this week what's happening in the insurance market and how it is that the historic rates that we've seen in the past are now coming down and you can get more insurance than you thought possible for your premium.
What I always recommend to our clients in a soft market is, this is the time to seek higher limits of liability if it's desirable for their operations.
The insurance business is a global market, of course, and wherever you fly in the world, it's something you have to keep in mind, and something we kept in mind when we recently flew around Southern Africa. Here's the part 2 of our tale. For me, one of the best uses of a general aviation airplane is to go new and interesting places, and we recently had the opportunity to do that flying around in southern Africa with some friends of ours, John and Martha King. Welcome, John and Martha, to the set. Thanks for joining us in AOPA Live this week.
Thank you, Tom.
Glad to be here.
We had just a wonderful time flying around southern Africa for a little more than a week by the time we did some of the training. You guys, of course, have flown all over the world, including literally around the world, in your airplane. So give me a little bit of a sense of how was Southern Africa different from an experiential standpoint than some of the other places that you've been?
A big part of the difference was that we did Southern Africa in Cessna 182s, and you get a totally different feel for the countryside than if you're flying over it in some high-performance airplane on your way from one city to another city.
Right.
And in the case of our flying there, one of the things that became very quickly we became very quickly aware of was that there's a lot of country in southern Africa that is not at all populated except by animals, and beautiful animals. Not that we could see a lot of them from the air, but we could sure see the elephants.
One of the things I liked especially about it, Tom, is that you could, the whole idea was, of course, to see animals. But what we got a chance to do by flying 182s is we could see where they lived and why the habitat worked for them. And you could see the spacing of the trees, you could see the different kinds of savanna, sometimes grass savanna, sometimes woodland savanna. And you understood where the animals were and why they were there. And the only way you could do that is flying something like a 182.
Mm-hmm. So it was really a lot about utility, of using the airplanes to get around, covering the amount of territory that we did, 3 countries, and about, 4 or 5 stops, including some additional ones coming in and out of various countries by general aviation airplane. And there's just no way you could have made that trip in a week by any other means. For many pilots, the best day of their life is the day that they get to buy an airplane. And for some of those pilots, it includes buying a new jet airplane. Here we are in the Cessna Citation 10 mock-up, and Cessna makes it really easy for folks buying a jet. They can sit in these mock-ups and learn about all the customization that's available to them. That's it from here in Wichita. Now back to the studio with Warren Morningstar.
Thanks, Tom. Like I said, the boss gets all the good trips. Well, next week, a special show on a special day. Please join us next Tuesday for AOPA Live This Week. Until then, I'm Warren Morningstar. Thanks for watching.